The Santa Cruz would be a great place for wildlife. They're not going to, it won't be dangerous for them, and it'll be a pleasant place for us to view the wildlife.
Designating parts of the Santa Cruz as an urban wildlife refuge. It has the support of the county, and now the city also will decide if it wants to do the same. You might not know if you look at it, but the usually dry Santa Cruz River once flowed freely in Tucson.
Now, decades of neglect may end if the city and county can convince Fish and Wildlife to designate it an urban wildlife refuge. 13 News reporter Bud Foster tells us what that entails.
It's going to be a wonderful project for people who live there and people who visit here.
Which right now cannot be said for much of the Santa Cruz as it passes through Tucson. Even though dry for most of the year, it is still considered the fourth most endangered river in America, something that has alarmed conservationists, so much so that nearly 50 groups and organizations of people have joined forces to encourage the Biden administration to protect it.
Not a lot of downside to it. I think it'll bring recognition, the amenity of having healthy habitat and wildlife along the Santa Cruz through the city of Tucson.
When we think of a wildlife refuge, the first thing that comes to mind is isolation, way out of town, in the middle of nowhere. But this wildlife refuge will be in the middle of the city, along the banks of the river in 3 areas designated on these maps. Supporters say it's been a long time coming.
What's really exciting about the National Wildlife Refuge opportunity is that though there may be this legacy of abuse, there's also this really deep legacy of stewardship and deep legacy of care and life existing along the Santa Cruz.
But much of that life has disappeared over the decades. However, a water project started in 2019 has proven that life can come back, and people, locals and tourists, are interested in that, which was only the first step in bringing the river back to what it was just a few decades ago.
To enhance the habitat, the vegetation, the opportunities for wildlife viewing, for interpretation, so people can walk along the Huckleberry Loop and learn about the plants and animals nearby.
The county sent this letter to Fish and Wildlife last May asking for the wildlife refuge designation as part of the administration's beautification projects. The city will likely vote to send a letter of its own asking the same.
Just the current chapter in this long story of life in the Santa Cruz, and it's a really exciting one because we've never been able to say that we've been this close to any form of really federal designation or protection for these spaces.
But this chapter is a lesson learned through years of neglect and abuse of the Santa Cruz. I'm Bud Foster, 13 News.